Project B just reportedly offered $5 billion to lure Caitlin Clark away from the WNBA, and the entire league is about to have a collective meltdown. This Saudi-backed venture is targeting the one player who actually moves the needle, while other WNBA stars are scrambling to get invited. A'ja Wilson and everyone else watching this unfold must be feeling some type of way right now. Drop a comment right now. If someone offered you $5 billion to leave your job and play basketball in a new league, would you even hesitate for a second? Information coming out about the Project B project. Some people said that it ain't backed by the Saudis. And Your Majesty, a lot of people saying they Maverick Carter pulled out. One thing I can tell you is that they're definitely targeting Caitlin Clark. I mean, articles is coming out the pipeline. Everything is coming out that they want Caitlin Clark to be a part of this thing. Let's get straight to the absurdity of this situation. Project B, this mysterious new basketball league that keeps claiming it's not backed by Saudi Arabia, while simultaneously being backed by Saudi Arabia, is reportedly targeting Caitlin Clark with offers in the billions. Not millions. Billions. With a B. That's the kind of money that makes even the most loyal WNBA player start doing mental math about whether loyalty is really worth turning down generational wealth. And spoiler alert, it's not. Nobody is that loyal, and anyone who claims they would be is lying to themselves and everyone else. The report suggests that Project B is aiming for a $5 billion valuation and is prepared to offer star players salaries that make current WNBA contracts look like pocket change. Base offers are reportedly around $2 million per season, which is already significantly more than the WNBA maximum salary. But for someone like Caitlin Clark, who is by far the biggest draw in women's basketball, the offer would presumably be much higher. We're talking about the possibility of her making more in one season with Project B than she would make in her entire WNBA career. That's not a difficult decision from a financial perspective, regardless of whatever loyalty to the WNBA people might expect. If Caitlin Clark be a part of this Project B thing, this could definitely hurt the WNBA. I mean, this could hurt the WNBA very bad, because let's say Caitlin Clark be alright, okay, I'm gonna do it. But in the clause, it might says, well, you can't play for the Indiana Fever no more. We'll just buy you out your contract. We'll come up with some way to get you out of that deal. You gotta be slowly, exclusively Project B. Here's where it gets really interesting and really uncomfortable for everyone else in the WNBA. Project B needs the star power to launch successfully. They need names that casual sports fans recognize and will pay attention to. Right now, in women's basketball, there's really only one name that fits that description at the level they need, Caitlin Clark. Sure, A'ja Wilson is a multiple MVP and champion. Angel Reese has a strong social media following. Breanna Stewart is one of the all-time greats. But none of them move television ratings and attendance numbers the way Caitlin does. The data on this is irrefutable. When Caitlin got injured during the playoffs, WNBA viewership dropped 55%. That didn't happen with any other player. So Project B is reportedly going all in on Caitlin because they understand that she's the key to making this entire venture viable. Without her, they're just another alternative basketball league that might attract some good players but won't generate mainstream attention. With her, they instantly become a legitimate competitor to the WNBA and potentially the more attractive option for players looking to maximize earnings. That's why the reported offer is so massive. They're not just buying Caitlin's playing services, they're buying legitimacy, media attention, and a fan base that will follow her wherever she goes. We're going to be telling you a little bit about the Project B League and whether or not Caitlin Clark should take the money as you go and play in that league, because we know that if the room repayment for Naka Wumuke is $3 million or is $2 million, we know Caitlin Clark said he wouldn't dash. And we can be honest here, Caitlin Clark is going to be paid more than Naka Wumuke. Now let's talk about how A'ja Wilson and other WNBA stars are probably feeling about this situation. A'ja has been the face of the WNBA for years. She's won multiple MVPs, championships, and has been the league's most decorated player. But Project B isn't reportedly offering her billions. They're not centering their entire launch strategy around signing her. The new league that's trying to revolutionize women's basketball apparently doesn't think she's essential to that revolution. That's got to sting on some level, regardless of whatever public statements about loyalty to the WNBA she might make. Angel Reese is probably in a similar position. She's got a massive social media following, she's marketable, she's got personality and charisma. But the reports aren't about Project B offering her generational wealth to build the league around her. They're about Caitlyn. The narrative is entirely focused on Caitlyn. And for someone like Angel, who has positioned herself as Caitlyn's rival and has often seemed frustrated by the attention differential, watching Project B confirm what everyone already knew, that Caitlyn is in a completely different tier of marketability, has got to create some complicated feelings. The structure of Project B is also worth examining, because it reveals their priorities. They're planning 6 teams of 11 players each, totaling 66 players. The season would run during the WNBA off-season, starting in November 2026. Games would presumably be played in various international locations, with significant presence in the Middle East, given the Saudi backing. The whole operation is designed to not directly compete with the WNBA schedule-wise, which is smart from a strategic standpoint. They're not asking players to choose between leagues initially. They're offering additional income on top of WNBA salaries. Except that's probably not entirely true for the biggest stars. If Project B is offering Caitlyn the kind of money being reported, there will almost certainly be exclusivity clauses involved. They're not going to pay her billions and then let her maintain her primary identity as a WNBA player. They'll want her to be the face of Project B, which likely means eventually choosing between leagues if both prove successful. The WNBA would obviously want to prevent their biggest star from splitting attention and loyalty with a competing league. This sets up a future conflict that's going to force decisions that nobody wants to make publicly yet. The Saudi Arabia connection is the elephant in the room. That's not exactly a convincing denial. The reality is that Saudi Arabia has been aggressively investing in sports as part of their Vision 2030 initiative to diversify their economy and improve their international image. They've spent billions on golf through LIV, soccer, through various investments, boxing, Formula One, and now apparently basketball. The ethical questions around accepting Saudi money are complicated and uncomfortable. Saudi Arabia has one of the worst human rights records in the world, particularly regarding women's rights. Female athletes accepting millions or billions to play in a league, backed by a government that systematically oppresses women, creates obvious contradictions that are difficult to navigate. But here's the thing. Professional athletes are not ethically obligated to turn down life-changing money because the source is problematic. That's an unrealistic standard that people rarely apply to themselves in their own career decisions. Caitlyn Clark specifically would face enormous pressure and criticism if she accepts this offer. She's been positioned as a role model and a trailblazer for women's sports. Taking money from Saudi Arabia would undermine that image in the eyes of many people. But she's also a 23-year-old woman who has the opportunity to secure generational wealth for herself and her family. Asking her to turn that down for abstract principles that won't pay her bills is a big ask. The people who would criticize her for taking the money are generally not people who have turned down billions of dollars for ethical reasons themselves. The impact on the WNBA, if Caitlyn leaves, would be catastrophic. The league just experienced its most successful season ever, entirely because of the attention she brought. Attendance records were shattered. Television ratings were unprecedented. Merchandise sales exploded. All of that was driven primarily by one player. If that player leaves for a competing league, the WNBA returns to the obscurity it lived in before she arrived. That's not an exaggeration. The data supports it. The 55% viewership drop when she was injured shows exactly what happens to WNBA interest when Caitlyn isn't playing. Kathy Engelbert and the WNBA leadership are probably in full panic mode right now, even if they're not admitting it publicly. They've spent months taking Caitlyn for granted, allowing her to be physically targeted without adequate protection, failing to market her appropriately, and generally treating her like she should be grateful for the opportunity to play in the WNBA, rather than recognizing that she's the one doing the league a favor by being there. Now a competing league is offering her potentially billions to leave, and the WNBA has no leverage to keep her beyond appealing to loyalty that they haven't earned. The other players in the WNBA are in a complicated position. On one hand, many of them resented the attention Caitlyn received and complained about the coverage disparity. On the other hand, they benefited enormously from the increased viewership, attendance, and revenue that her presence generated. If she leaves, their salaries will likely decrease because league revenues will plummet. So they have a direct financial interest in her staying, even if they don't want to admit it. The envy some of them might feel about her receiving this massive offer is in direct tension with their need for her to stay in the WNBA to maintain their own earnings. Naomi Osaka has already announced she's joining Project B, which gives the league some credibility. She's a legitimate star with name recognition beyond just tennis fans. But her joining doesn't have the same impact that Caitlyn joining would have. Osaka is past her competitive prime and hasn't been as dominant recently. Caitlyn is entering her prime years and is the biggest name in women's basketball by far. Her decision will determine whether Project B becomes a legitimate threat to the WNBA or just another alternative league that fizzles out. The timing of this is also significant. The reported start date of November 2026 gives Caitlyn one more full WNBA season to increase her leverage and see how the league treats her. If the 2025 season involves more of the same physical targeting, inadequate protection from officials, and the league taking her for granted, that makes the Project B offer more attractive. If the WNBA actually steps up and treats her appropriately, that might make staying more appealing. But based on how the league has operated so far, betting on them suddenly changing their approach is probably not wise. The reported $2 million base salary for Project B players is interesting because it's already more than double what most WNBA players make. For mid-tier and role players, Project B would be an obvious choice financially, even without considering the prestige or attention. The WNBA has no way to compete with those salaries under their current revenue structure. So Project B could potentially poach a significant portion of WNBA players just by offering more money, even before considering whatever premium they're offering stars like Caitlyn. The 6-team structure is unusual and suggests Project B is starting small with plans to expand if successful. 6 teams of 11 players is manageable from a financial and logistical standpoint, while still providing enough competition to be legitimate. If the league proves viable in its first season, they could expand to 8 or 10 teams relatively quickly, but they're being smart by not overextending initially. Better to start small and successful than launch big and fail spectacularly. The claim that they're targeting 66 players total, which is about half the WNBA's roster spots, is strategic. They're not trying to replace the WNBA immediately. They're trying to complement it initially, then potentially outcompete it over time as they establish themselves. That's a smart approach because it reduces resistance from players who might be worried about burning bridges with the WNBA. You can play in both leagues initially, collect paychecks from both, and then make a decision about exclusivity once Project B has proven itself viable. The financial backing, whether it's technically Saudi or not, is clearly massive. You don't offer $2 million base salaries and target a $5 billion valuation without serious money behind you. The denials about Saudi involvement are semantics. Saudi companies are involved, the league will operate significantly in Saudi Arabia, and the money is coming from Saudi-connected sources. They can structure it through London-based holding companies all they want, but everyone knows where the money originates. The denials are just PR management to avoid the inevitable criticism about sports washing. For A'ja Wilson specifically, this situation has to be frustrating on multiple levels. She's been the best player in the WNBA by traditional metrics. She's won everything there is to win. But when it comes to marketability and leverage, she's not in Caitlyn's stratosphere. Project B's reported focus on Caitlyn confirms that publicly in a way that's probably uncomfortable. A'ja can tell herself that she's loyal to the WNBA and doesn't need validation from a new league. But watching someone else get offered potentially billions while you get standard offers has to create some complicated feelings regardless of public statements. So Project B is reportedly offering Caitlyn Clark billions to leave the WNBA, and every other player in the league is watching their worst nightmare potentially unfold.